Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Raw Reaction series, and specifically the Arsenal news show, keeping you up to date every single day, 8 a.m, with all that's been going on in the world of Arsenal, getting your thoughts and theories in the chat box too. It's a very interactive show as we try to make all of our shows on the Gooner Talk. You guys are the key part of this, so please do continue to put your thoughts and feelings into our chat box. And if you don't manage to catch the shows live, please do leave your comments down below. We try to get through as many of them as I can, but I am extremely busy, so I can only respond to a few of them. But please still do go and read the comments and leave your own below. But of course, if you are enjoying the show, drop a like on today's video and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Good morning to everybody that's joining us: Colin Rancid, Omar, Jose, Bungle, Matt, Edro, Sass. Hello, Black and Blanco, Pablo, Olu. We've got all of you in the chat box this morning. Matthew, Hal, Tom, Mark. Thank you so much, all of you guys, for joining in with the conversation, as always, and making this part of your morning routine. As always, if you could go and subscribe to the Arsenal Way. If you want to go and watch Arteta's press conference from yesterday, you can. It is up on the Arsenal Way. Also, a good chat with Kaya Kainak, Arsenal reporter at football.london, about the press conference that he was obviously in and was there in the press conference. So if you want to get all that good content, then please make sure you have subscribed. But let's kick on with Arteta's press conference in just a little bit. But first of all, the England squad was announced, in which Arsenal have two inclusions for the first time since Ainsley Maitland-Niles was called up alongside Bukayo Saka. But prior to that, Arsenal have been lacking in the whole England squad's call-up scenarios. We have had a few that have missed out, the likes of Emile Smith-Rowe not included, Ben White also not included. Kind of stunned that Ben White didn't get in over Connor Cody, but it is what it is. Aaron Ramsdale and Bukayo Saka, though, are involved, and Ramsdale really has an opportunity to stake his claim towards that England #1 spot. Jordan Pickford, of course, is, as we know, the England's #1 goalkeeper right now. But Ramsdale, now at a club like Arsenal, has a real opportunity to stake his claim, to push towards that World Cup #1 starting spot, and could do with an amazing season this year. We will wait to see if that happens, and we will absolutely be wishing him all the best, because the better he plays for us and the more likelihood he can get him for England, it's the better for Arsenal. So fingers crossed that is what will happen. But with Ben White and Emile Smith-Rowe not yet involved in the team, which is a shame, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we will start to see them involved in the coming weeks and months. There is another international break in November. Perhaps by that time, Ben White and Smith-Rowe have established themselves as possible options for the team. Going on, though, to Mikel Arteta's press conference, he reacted to a number of questions. Initially talking about Granit Xhaka, he said, obviously, it's really bad news personally for Xhaka. He had a couple of incidents already this season with COVID, with suspension, and now with long-term injury. He's a strong man, and he will use this time to focus on other things, and I'm sure he will be back in the right place when he's back. Obviously, he's a big player for us, someone who is really important, and he will be missed. Other players have to step up. And of course, he's talking about the likes of Sambi Lokonga, Mohamed El Neni, and Ainsley Maitland-Niles as well, who are all going to be involved in this situation. So very, very interesting stuff. And we will look forward to seeing what happens with the absence of Xhaka and who comes into the fold, or if Mikel Arteta, of course, changes back to that 4-3-3 formation. On his words on Leno and Ramsdale taking that spot, Arteta said everybody has to raise the level, and that's really positive. That is happening in different positions. You can see when players are coming in now, they are fully ready to take the place. Now it's going to happen with Granit, and before it happened when he was suspended, and it's happened in other positions. Players are coming up and showing that they are ready, because the way they train and the way they play is top. So after they get rewarded when they have the minutes. Someone will have to take a spot in every single position at goalkeeper. It has been Ramsdale. I think Ramsdale has deservedly taken that #1 spot. He has been the better goalkeeper of the two so far this season, has earned it. Leno conceded 9 goals in those opening 3 games. He decided to give an opportunity to Ramsdale, and Ramsdale took that opportunity. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because I think our distribution in particular has stepped up massively. And I think the communication between Ramsdale and the back four has also improved over Leno. So we will see how that relationship develops, but I hope that Leno really does push Ramsdale, because that's what you want, a dynamic of two players pushing each other to be as good as they possibly can be. Speaking on his Manager of the Month nomination, last thing we're going to focus on from the press conference, he says, "It is the beauty of this sport. We all know that. We all depend on results, and perspective changes quickly in both ways. So you always have to be on your toes." And it is quite staggering that just a month ago, people were talking about him being sacked, to now being nominated for the Manager of the Month awards. So it's very, very interesting that this is the case, and does show, of course, how things can change. I've written a piece yesterday about how Arsenal could be pushing towards a top four challenge this season if Manchester United and Chelsea's form does dip, which it has done recently. We will see. It's still very early. It's my job. Need to write about that. So there you go. Let's go into some interesting stuff from the Europa League action last night. First of all, William Saliba. You've probably seen this video circulating around your social feeds last night. But looking into specifically a really good battle with William Saliba, did really well, in my opinion, to really kind of shuffle the ball out. And, he got involved in a bit of a scrap. He didn't cross the line. It looks quite bad in this image here, but I thought he dealt with the situation quite well. And obviously you had all the Marseille players then pile in. It was a little bit of a frenetic game with a 0-0 draw between Saliba and everyone in the Marseille side against Galatasaray. But it's a very entertaining game. And there could have been a clear penalty given to Marseille. Matteo Guendouzi was fouled by Patrick Van Aanholt, and the two didn't respond particularly well. Guendouzi went up to Van Aanholt afterwards and said a few words in his ear. And this, late last night, and thanks to the people that sent me this morning, Van Aanholt tweeting out saying, "Running your mouth after VAR proved you wrong. Little man needs to relax before I snatch that wig off your head. Well done to my Lions for a well-earned point on the road." Not the best behaviour from Patrick Van Aanholt, to be honest. Guendouzi also not the best behaviour to be going up to him and speaking words in his ear after the decision's gone against him. But we know Guendouzi now. We know the character of the guy. We know what he's about. It's not exactly surprising to see this whatsoever. But it does come very soon after the whole Gerson situation and the comments about him grating his Marseille teammates. It's an interesting one, but it's not often you see this type of public calling out of other players. So Patrick Van Aanholt, I think, comes off looking probably a lot worse than Guendouzi in this scenario for, getting so riled that he felt the need to go public with a tweet, which isn't all that professional. We will be talking this afternoon to Ben from the Marseille View. Apologies that this didn't go out on Wednesday. Ben managed to get himself locked out of his house, which is, all hilarious. And we'll be able to take the mick out of him this evening on the show. But Ben will be joining us about 5 o'clock UK time to talk about William Saliba's time in Marseille with our latest report. Yesterday, I had a chat with Kev from Next Generation Arsenal. We went through all of the latest information regarding Arsenal's youth. In fact, I can see Kev in the chat box. Wherever Goozy goes, so does the drama, he says. But yes, I was joined by Kev yesterday and we had a really good chat about the Arsenal youth. So make sure you go and have a watch of that. And of course, give Kev a follow on Twitter at Scouting Indoors. And that does conclude all of the latest Arsenal news of the day. In regards to possible articles that went out yesterday, there was one, as I say, talking about the fact that Arsenal could, you never know, be open to a top four challenge this season. And another that went into more of the tactical side of the win over Spurs and how that might be quite a little bit more different to try and achieve against a Brighton side that play with the back three. So there was a few things that went out yesterday, so make sure you go and check them out. Anyway, we've reached the final part of today's show, which is the opportunity for you guys to ask some questions and some queries. One of the things that I'm just considering, obviously you see what's behind me is a big green screen and all the stuff that goes with it. But on this side, it's just a white wall. And I'm considering getting some soundproofing. And I don't know how much that's going to affect the quality of the sounds, but I want to try and do everything to improve the quality of the audio. I don't know if that would help. with my voice sounding a little bit more crisp through the microphone. I know the microphone can be a little bit grainy sometimes, so I want to try and do things to improve that. If you think that would help, let me know, because I'm a complete moron when it comes to that type of stuff. So we're doing all we can though to improve the audio and things like that. Anyway, let's go into the chat box and get your questions. Edro Sass says, we aren't getting any money for Guendouzi. Yes, we will be getting money for Guendouzi, because he's got an option in his contract of about £9 million of a clause which will kind of activate. And that will be achieved through some very easy clauses for appearances and stuff like that, which he is expected to achieve. So the expectation is that he will move to Marseille for the option in his contract for that £9 million. Now become an obligation to buy clause rather than the option that it is now. Just use the right mic, says Nikolai. Feel free to throw in a suggestion of what that would be, Nikolai. It's much more helpful when people suggest solutions to problems rather than creating them. Matt G says, can we talk about the Brighton tweet? I dislike Mopé and hope he never scores again. What Brighton tweet? Have I missed something? Let's have a look. Brighton Hove Albion. What have they tweeted? I can't see anything. Oh, hold on. Arsenal at home is next, with Mopé and a crying, okay. Yeah, well, they know what they're doing. They know how to get a little bit of a rile. Let me have a look at the social engagement on this tweet. 17.8 thousand likes. They've done very well, their social team. They'll be very happy with that response. So fair play. And fingers crossed we absolutely batter them, and I hope they get relegated. So there we go. Lovely stuff from a good bit of banter from Brighton. You got to respect it. Reggie says, what would you need to see out of Brighton game that would make you think we could compete for fifth? A continuation of what we saw against Spurs. Solid creativity, frequent chance creation, a balanced attack, and solid performances at the back. I think that's what we need to see. We need to see this coherent style continued under Arteta into the game against Brighton. Of course, we will be doing a show around the Brighton game and the result. I do need to check my schedule, because I'm working the game for Football London tomorrow and Reach. So let me just check. What's the date of the game? Is it the 3rd? No, it's the 2nd. The 2nd of October. Let me just have a quick look at when I'm going to be working on the 2nd. You feel like this is stuff that I would know. Going to be working 3 till 11, so I won't be on until 11 o'clock at night if we do a Raw reaction show. I may just do it the Sunday morning, as we have done previously. But I'll be working till 11 o'clock tomorrow night, so that's going to be fun. Love working that late. Fabio says, Tom, how acute do you think the problem is in the midfield? The options given Partey has had so many issues already. Should we go for our midfielder in the winter rather than next summer? It would depend upon any other issues we face between now and the window in January opening. It depends how well Xhaka returns from his injury. It's really difficult to buy the quality players that you need in January. It also increases the price a hell of a lot. If you can do it, of course, go and do it. But I think the likelihood is that we'll see more players be sold, and we'll actually do more of our incoming business. In fact, we definitely will do most of our incoming business in the summer. I genuinely don't really know, bar a central midfielder and a forward, what Arsenal really need, unless we move a lot of players on in the defensive area next summer. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes and how that works. But I struggle to see how much can be done to this squad. I know that people would say, I need to sign XYZ world-class players, but get a world-class striker, get a world-class centre midfielder, and I think we're pretty golden, to be honest. You got Saliba coming back. That's like a new signing. So, I think there's a lot of options that we've got there. And I think we're fine. Let's go to Mayo. Says, I don't have a problem with Ramsdale, but he needs to be tested against the likes of Liverpool, Man City, Man United, and Chelsea. Well, I always struggle with comments like this. I mean, I always struggle because I think that someone does have a problem with that player. I'll be real with you. I think that, Mayo, you probably do have this issue with Ramsdale, and you probably have a very much of a liking towards Leno. Because when it's always a case of they need to be tested against so and so and so and so. Look, shots are shots at the end of the day. You look at a goalkeeper's XG. You look at the way in which they deal with shots conceded. It tells you how good they are as a goalkeeper. XG for teams is a little bit trickier, but XG for goalkeepers is actually quite useful to look at, because you look at expected conceded goals and you look at how their save and the number of saves they make per match, or the amount of goals they concede per game, matches up against where those shots were taken. And it gives you a very good idea about those things and about how they've dealt with them. Ramsdale was playing for Sheffield United last season. Prior to that, he was playing for Bournemouth. And for me, when you look at those teams that he's played against every single team in the Premier League that's not Sheffield United. So he's come up against players and teams that are all better than the team that he plays for. And he came out with that season with the Player of the Season award. I don't know what more Ramsdale really needs to do to convince people that he's a very decent goalkeeper. He was playing for a very poor team, which gave people kind of this mindset that he wasn't going to be worth the 24 million. Even I was hesitant about spending that much. It was more to do with the price than the actual player. I always said that I felt like he was a decent keeper, not really knowing too much about him at the time, just from what I'd seen playing in the Premier League. But when you do the research and you go into the actual tactical breakdowns, as we did, talk to people that know plenty about him, you come to realise that actually he is a good goalkeeper, and he's improved us massively in terms of our distribution. He's improved us massively in terms of the marshalling of our defence and the communication with our defence. And he's more of a leader at the back than Leno has been for us. And I feel like what he's shown in those 3-4 games is a greater improvement on those different characteristics. It's not to say that Leno is a bad keeper. I don't think Leno is a bad keeper at all. I think Leno is a decent goalkeeper. I think he's a keeper that could play in the top leagues of England, of Germany. But if there's an opportunity for Arsenal to upgrade on Leno, do it. And we are doing it, and we've done it. So thankfully we have done that. I think people get very, very connected, very, very obsessed around players, and it means that their view of whoever they're going up against gets skewed in the opposite direction. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. It's just the way we are as humans. He is not that, though, Tony. So let's less of the abuse of our own players still. Thank you very much. Black and Blanco says, Leno decent, just not for a side that wants to play out from the back. Leno's personality doesn't suit this back. Like, what do you mean by that, Mo? What do you mean by the personality? Because that's quite a broad accusation. Gameboy says, hi, Tom. Do you know any Brighton players injured for the game against Arsenal? The team news for Brighton is that Bissouma, we are still unsure about. Welbeck is having a bit of a scan and assessment ahead of the game. Alzate is out. I'm trying to think of anyone else. Webster is also out, and Lamptey is still, we don't know if he's going to be fit enough to start, but he was on the bench for their game against Crystal Palace. So they have quite a few players that could yet still come back in and also could still be out. So we will wait and see. Sasha says, good interview with Lee Dixon on Arsenal Vision. Talks about challenges for young defenders and what it means to be an Arsenal player. Always go and check out the boys at the Arsenal Vision podcast with Elliot and our friend Clive, of course, who have both featured on TGT. So make sure you go and check them out if you haven't already. Peppa Pig says, would you offer Laka for Kessié or both on expiring contracts? Kessié is a great player. I'd absolutely love if we brought in Kessié. That would be a fantastic acquisition. SK says, I love Edu and Arteta being ruthless to Wenger and Emery players that are not good enough. I feel Edu tried to get rid of more, but no one wanted them to give Edu the time. I agree. I think Edu's doing a good job at Arsenal. I don't think that... I've discussed this with many people, and I've always been willing to have a debate about this. I find it really hard to blame Edu for much of what's been going on at Arsenal, because one of the things that has improved over the last 2 years has been the recruitment, has been the job that Edu is designed to do. It's not been perfect, and that has obviously shown with the Willian signing, with the Runnison signing. But what it has been, it's been good in so many other areas, with Gabriel, with Partey, with Erdegaard and Matt Ryan coming in January, with all of the 6 signings that we've made this summer, with the ability to get £25 million for Joe Willock. Yes, we failed to move on as many players as we needed to, but it's been a market where people just didn't. How can you sell a player that no one wants? And simply by saying dropping their price is not always a sound solution to that problem. If no one wants the player, there's not much you can do. He agreed a fee with Crystal Palace for Eddie Nketiah, and Eddie Nketiah's personal terms scuppered that deal from happening. So it's just, I find it very hard when Edu gets a lot of criticism, because I actually think he's doing a very decent job. It's been Arteta that I feel has deservingly faced more criticism because of some of the decision-making on the pitch, some of the decision-making with the team selections. But of late, again, in the last 4 games, he has started to turn things around and he has earned that Manager of the Month nomination. It's important that your opinion stays fluid. It's important that your opinion changes with the evidence that you get faced with. And if 1 minute you don't think the manager is the right person to be in charge, that's fine if the evidence suggests that's the case. And if you then think that it is, and he should be staying, he should be given time because, again, the evidence suggests that that is the right choice, then you're absolutely entitled to change your position on that. Don't listen to people that want to take the mick out of you or abuse you for changing your mind. It says way more about them than it does about you. Let's go to Andrew. Says this is a great test at Brighton. They are getting results. They're actually playing that well, so they are there for the taking. It's interesting when you look at who they've played and where they've got their points against. It was pointed out to me yesterday by Ojo on our preview show. And it made a solid point. Leicester, they obviously won away from home. Really impressive result. But the other sides that they've played against and they've beaten, they are sides that you would say, yeah, a Brighton side with those players, and it probably should be getting results against those teams. But it's still going to be a very big test. We've only won at the Amex, I think, once in our last 5 or 6 attempts. So it's going to be difficult. So we'll wait and see what happens. Hal says, hi, Tom. North London derbies are North London derbies. So do you think we can sustain the same intensity for the rest of the season? The honest answer is probably not, Hal. We probably can't sustain that for the rest of the season. What we can sustain is momentum. And we need to do that by winning games and playing as good of a football as we can. If Erdegaard's in the team, you can be guaranteed that he will give you plenty of running. He has a whole week of recovery, as do all of the players, because we don't have European football other than the cup games that we'll be facing. But honestly, we have plenty of opportunities to recover and rest so that when it comes round to playing these games at the weekend, we can go full tilt, full time, and attack them with as much ferocity as we possibly could do. Mr. Harrison Carnaby has changed his name to Mr. Harrison C. So I respect that. Harrison says, should we really go for a Fraser Forster or should we try to sign another top keeper to give competition to Ramsdale? I think Forster is a decent keeper in the Premier League for a number 2 that will push the likes of Ramsdale. So I think I'm fine to say if we went for a Fraser Forster to be back up. I don't think it actually blocks the path of players like Carl Hein or Arthur Okonkwo that are coming through that are very highly rated either. If you were to say sign a Runnison, who's in mid-20s and that's not very good, but, you know, give him a long contract, it blocks that path. If you sign an older goalkeeper that's a clear number 2 on a short-term contract of 1 or 2 years, then it gives you more scope to be malleable with your squads and be able to bring through those young keepers should they take the chances given to them. I'd be looking not towards Leno as much if he is going to be, you know, of the mindset that he is, that he's looking for other teams if he's not happy with his situation. And I can't blame him for not being happy. You're a goalkeeper. You want to play. But if it comes to him wanting to leave in January, you know, in games that we are going to play a backup keeper, why not try the likes of Carl Hein? Carl Hein has proven on the international stage. In fact, I think Carl Hein's played more international matches this year than Bernd Leno has for Estonia. So why not play Carl Hein in games and give him an opportunity? Because Leno's future is clearly not going to be with Arsenal in the long term. So there you go. I should note, Marek Harrison says that I'm loving Ramsdale. He's proved to be the way more than the good backup I had him pegged as. So that's a fair enough statement. Ollie says Sam Johnston will be free as well next summer, and I prefer him to a Ben Foster that Matthew Elam suggested. He is 39, I think now, good old Fozzie. But yeah, interesting stuff. Isoa says, does Arsenal need a third creative player since Erdegaard and Emile Smith-Rowe are both starting? Yes, they do. I think it's a position that we may need to consider if we are going to see both of those players starting, and maybe Marco Asensio turns out to be that player. That would be so amusing to me after everything that's happened and after the way in which I followed his career personally, and he's been a bit of a TGT mascot along with Szoboszlai over these years. So if he ended up at Arsenal, that would be quite entertaining in the end. Let's scroll up a little bit more to kind of the top comments that I missed. Colin says, Tom, all of a sudden our expectation level has risen tenfold. What reaction to a negative result against Brighton? Probably a massive reality check, bringing us very heavily back down to earth, mate, is probably what it would be. Adam says, hi, Tom. Arteta has improved his team selection of late, but do you think that he needs to improve his man management and squad rotation? Squad rotation, absolutely. He needs to be rotating less players in games. Every game, week to week, 1 or 2 changes max, ideally just the one. Make sure you've got a stable team. We're not in Europe. We don't have to rotate too heavily. 1 or 2 changes, ideally 1 in each game. In terms of his in-game management, substitutions could be a little bit more hastier. It could be done a little bit quicker, but I know he's got a lot of loyalty to his players that he starts, and the more that they play together, the more the chemistry and the connection between them will build up. So there's plenty to be excited about. Benny says, what are my thoughts on the Willock sale? It looks an absolute genius move right now. I know that Joe's been suffering with a bit of an injury so far this season. I really think £25 million has proven to be the right deal for us to accept. 5 games, no goals so far for Newcastle this season. £25 million was a hell of a lot. I think that Newcastle did bank heavily on Willock being a difference maker for them. I want it to work out because I like Joe and I wish him the absolute best. But unfortunately, taking £25 million, if he'd have absolutely smashed it, it would have made us look a little bit silly. So there is always the negative for him, positive for us, that £25 million is a hell of a lot of money we got for a player that's not scored a single goal from midfield so far this season. And, you know, it is what it is. IGK says Emi Martinez was worth 2 million and we sold him for 20. Under Edu, good business has been done. Willock is another one. It's a solid point about Martinez. It's with the benefit of hindsight, it's very, very easy to turn around and say, oh my days, how did we sell Emi Martinez? Look at what he's doing. But at the time, he played 10 games for us. 12 games at that point. Yes, he'd been good. No one was coming in for Leno, who'd been good. Like at that point, you wouldn't say that Leno was someone that we were thinking of selling because he wasn't good enough. He'd been good for us, as had Martinez. The problem is that Martinez, as IGK says, was worth about 2 million quid at the start of the year. Wasn't ever in anyone's thoughts about a future prospect as a keeper at Arsenal. And we got offered a very big fee by Aston Villa. So whilst I regret selling Emi Martinez, I absolutely regret it. But I totally understand the decision to sell him at the time because it made absolute sense to accept a high amount of money for a player that wasn't worth anywhere close to that off the back of just 10 to 12 games. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. I regret the decision, but I just understand why we did sell him at the time. Ish says, looking at the starting lineup that beat Spurs, what positions would need upgrading at this moment after their brilliant performance? Obviously, the striker position, we can't keep Aubameyang forever. Central midfield, if there's any opportunity to upgrade on that position, you do it. But beyond that, you'd say that maybe we need to add another creative attacking midfielder because we're quite light in that area after we sold Joe Willock. Other than that, defence, maybe if you move on, a Holding, Kolasinac, Cedric, Chambers, if all of these guys, Saliba, they end up moving on, we'll probably need to bring in a defender or two next summer as well. It depends on outgoings for a lot of it, but world-class striker, world-class midfielder, and I think we're golden. Christian says, I'm still not trusting the process, which is fine, but what I do want is to see consistency. If we see consistency only, then it will change my perspective. And Christian, that's all I'm asking for. I'm not yet fully back on the Arteta train. I need to see the style that I saw against Spurs week in, week out, and results improving. And as we go through these games, last season, and you have to say under Arteta, our performances against the big 6 sides have improved. We went to Chelsea and won. We haven't done that since Van Persie scored that hat-trick in the 5-3 win in the league. We went to Man United and won. We haven't done that since, 2006. We've gone to places and we've got good results and good performances. We've also beaten the likes of Liverpool at home. We've beaten Chelsea at home. We've beaten Spurs at home twice. We've beaten Manchester United at home. We've beaten these big teams. It's been against the smaller sides that we have struggled. It's against the sides that we've been expected to beat, like your Villas, like your Burnleys, like your Southamptons of this world, that we have struggled, like West Ham. We haven't been able to get the wins in those games that we've needed to. Everton beat us for the first time at home, trying to think maybe the first time at the Emirates. I can't remember a win they've got there before. We should be expected, not entitled, but we should be expected to be going and trying to beat these teams. And that's been the difference. That's been the problem for Arteta. So in these games that we've got coming up against Brighton, against Crystal Palace, and against Aston Villa, if we get 3 wins from 3 in those games, that signifies to me consistency. It signifies to me that there is a clear style and that we are pushing towards the right direction. And then, and only then, can I turn around and say, I'm back with this. I'm backing this. This is what I want. This is what I want to continue. And we'll be back on the train. But right now, it's great what we're seeing. Really good turnaround. But we need consistency to get more of the fan base back on board. If we go and we win the next 3 games in a row, I think it would take a hell of a negative Nelly to turn around and be like, look, I'll hold my hands up. It's going really well. I want to see this continue. I want to see where this can go. To say if we won the next 3 games that you'd still want Arteta sacked at that point, I think would be incredibly naive and stubborn, and probably down the route of you care more about your own opinion than Arteta succeeding, which is a big shame. But we'll see. We're not at that stage yet. We could go and lose to Brighton. So there is all of the option in the world that it goes crumbling down in the next game. Hopefully it doesn't. And I look forward to covering it tomorrow. We will see what happens on Saturday afternoon or evening. When is the actual game? Is it an evening? Is it like a 5:30 kickoff? Let's have a look. It is indeed a 5:30 kickoff. And thank God it's on TV. Thank goodness. We're sick of games not being on telly. So I'll be able to watch that. 5:30 kickoff on Saturday. I'll be back with the show for you guys. I'll be back this afternoon, of course, with a show with Ben from the Marseille View to talk about William Saliba's time in September. It actually worked out quite well that we delayed it because, of course, he played yesterday evening in the 0-0 draw against Galatasaray. He didn't have the best of games last weekend, which we'll be discussing very heavily. But we'll be looking at Saliba this month. In fact, I can get it up on the screen for you. So join us at 5 p.m. UK time for the report of William Saliba. That'll be live on the channel. Tomorrow morning, I'll be back, of course, as always, with the 8 a.m. show. And then I'll be bringing you content in the wake of the Brighton fixture after my shift ends on Saturday and Sunday morning. We will see you guys very, very soon. Have a fantastic Friday. I'll see you a little bit later on. And as always, up the Arsenal.